Welcome to the golden age of earth-moving. The 1970s weren't just about disco, they were about excess power, unfiltered black smoke, and the birth of giants like the Terex Titan. There were no computers to limit the torque, just mechanical injection and brute force. If you prefer the sound of a Detroit diesel screaming over the hum of an electric motor, you found your home. Subscribe now. Let's revisit 10 legends of metal that define the loudest decade in construction history. 1. Fiat Allis 41B, the short-lived king of dozers. For decades, the heavy equipment world had an unwritten rule. Caterpillar was the king of the hill, and the D9 was the limit of how big a bulldozer could practically be. However, in the 1970s, a challenger emerged that shattered that ceiling and forced the entire industry to rethink the physics of earth-moving. The story actually begins with Alice Chalmers, which introduced the HD41 in 1970 as the world's first true superdozer. By 1974, Alice Chalmers had entered a joint venture with the Italian conglomerate Fiat, creating the brand Fiat Allis. The updated version of their giant, the Fiat Allis 41B, became the undisputed heavyweight champion of the decade. The 41B was a monster. While a standard Cat D9G of the time offered around 385 horsepower, the 41B boasted a massive Cummins VT1710C12 engine. This 12-cylinder, 1,010 cubic-inch power plant churned out 524 flywheel horsepower. In terms of operating weight, the 41B tipped the scales at over 140,000 pounds, approx 63 tons, when fully equipped with a ripper and semi-U blade. This machine was designed primarily for ripping rock that previously required drilling and blasting. It opened up new economic possibilities for strip mining, allowing companies to tear through overburden mechanically rather than using explosives. However, the sheer size of the 41B was ultimately its Achilles heel. The drivetrain and undercarriage struggled to cope with the immense torque and weight, leading to frequent breakdowns and high operating costs. While it held the title of the world's largest dozer throughout the 1970s, it could not sustain its market dominance against the more reliable competition that followed. 2. Terex 33-19 Titan, the Green Giant. If you opened a book about trucks in the 1970s, you almost certainly saw a picture of the Terex 33-19 Titan. Painted in the brand's signature high-light green, the Titan wasn't just a truck, it was a rolling monument to General Motors' engineering ambition. Unveiled in 1973 at the American Mining Congress in Las Vegas, the Titan was designed to be the highest-capacity haul truck in existence. While standard large haul trucks of the era carried 100 to 150 tons, the Titan was engineered to carry a staggering 350 tons, 317 metric tons, of payload. To move this unprecedented weight, GM used a powertrain derived from the railroad industry. The heart of the Titan was an electromotive division, EMD, 16645E4 locomotive engine, a 16-cylinder, two-stroke diesel that generated 3,300 horsepower. This engine powered a generator which in turn fed electricity to 4 traction motors located in the rear wheels. Visually, the Titan was distinct not just for its size, but for its axle configuration. It utilized 3 axles, 10 tires total, to distribute its immense weight, a rarity in haul trucks which usually feature 2 axles. Only one Titan was ever built. After its testing phase, it spent its working life at the Kaiser Steel Eagle Mountain Mine in California and later at a coal mine in Sparwood, British Columbia. Despite being a one-off prototype, the Titan became the face of 1970s mining power. It remained the world's largest truck for 25 years, until the introduction of the Caterpillar 797 in the late 1990s. Today, the Titan still exists as a static tourist attraction in Sparwood, a permanent reminder of the 1970s obsession with size. 3. Caterpillar D9H, the last of the flat-track legends. While the Fiat Allis 41B was the biggest and the Terex Titan was the flashiest, the Caterpillar D9H was the true workhorse of the 1970s. Introduced in 1974 to replace the legendary D9G, The D9H represented the absolute pinnacle of traditional track-type tractor design. Before Caterpillar revolutionized the industry with the high-drive, elevated sprocket design in the late 1970s, dozers had a conventional oval track shape. The D9H was the ultimate evolution of this classic form. Under the hood, it featured the Mighty Cat D353 engine, a 6-cylinder, turbocharged, and after-cooled diesel that produced 410 flywheel horsepower, a significant bump-up from the previous generation. The D9H is revered by historians and operators because it perfected the balance of weight, power, and reliability. It featured a pinned equalizer bar, a sealed and lubricated track system, SALT, which greatly extended undercarriage life, and pilot-operated hydraulics that made the machine easier to control despite its size. In the mid-70s, if you were building a highway, dam, or working a mine, the D9H was the machine you wanted. It had a distinctive throaty exhaust note and a hard-nose radiator grille that gave it an aggressive, rugged appearance. Although it was eventually replaced by the radically different D10 and D9L high-drive models, the D9H is often cited by old-school operators as the best dozer Caterpillar ever made, marking the end of an era for conventional heavy equipment design. 4. International TD25C, the Red Rival. In the 1970s, the construction world was largely divided into two camps: those who ran yellow iron, Caterpillar, and those who swore by red iron, International Harvester. While Caterpillar held the market share, the International TD25C was the only machine that gave the Mighty Cat D9 a genuine run for its money. The TD25C was a brute, produced from the late 1960s through the late 1970s. It earned a reputation for being a driver's machine, due to a unique engineering feature that Caterpillar didn't have at the time: 2-speed planetary steering. While a standard dozer steered by braking one track, cutting power to it, the TD25C allowed the operator to keep power to both tracks while turning. This meant the machine could push a full blade of dirt around a curve without losing momentum. This live track steering gave it a distinct advantage in specific applications, such as side-cutting roads or pushing scrapers. Under the hood lay the International DT817B engine, a turbocharged inline-six diesel that was famous for two things: its distinctive roaring exhaust note and the thick plumes of black smoke it emitted under heavy load. The TD25C was heavy, weighing in at over 65,000 pounds bare, and often exceeding 100,000 pounds when equipped with heavy protection packages for logging or rock work. Although International Harvester eventually sold its construction division to Dresser in the early 1980s, the TD25C remains an icon of the 70s, a loud, smoky, and powerful symbol of the red resistance against Caterpillar's dominance. 5. Hough 400 Payloader, the articulated giant. Today, seeing a massive wheel loader filling a mining truck is a common sight, but in the early 1960s and 70s, this concept was revolutionary. The machine that proved a wheel loader could be a primary production tool rather than just a cleanup machine was the Hough 400 Payloader. The Frank G. Wabco, later acquired by International Harvester, invented the term payloader, and the Model 400 was their masterpiece. When it launched, it was the world's first giant articulated wheel loader. Before the 400, large loaders were often rigid frame, which made them clumsy and difficult to maneuver in tight mining pits. The Hough 400 utilized a center pivot articulation, allowing the front and rear frames to twist independently. This design became the industry standard for all large loaders that followed. By the 1970s, the updated H400B was a common sight in quarries and major earth-moving projects. It was a beast of a machine, typically powered by a V12 Cummins or a Detroit diesel engine, generating over 500 horsepower. It carried a bucket capacity ranging from 10 to 20 cubic yards, allowing it to load the mining trucks of the day in just 3 or 4 passes. The operator sat high up in a cab located on the front half of the machine, giving them a terrifyingly clear view of the bucket action. The Hough 400 paved the way for modern giants like the Cat 994, or Komatsu WA-1200, proving that rubber tires could compete with steel tracks in the mine. 6. Poclain 1000. The French hydraulic revolution. In the early 1970s, the vast majority of large-scale excavation was still done by cable-operated electric shovels. These machines were reliable but slow, heavy, and tethered by massive power cables. The idea of a hydraulic excavator competing with these mining giants was laughable to many, until the arrival of the Poclain 1000. Manufactured in France, Poclain was the undisputed pioneer of high-pressure hydraulic technology. While American and Japanese manufacturers were still experimenting with lower-pressure systems, Poclain had perfected a system operating at over 4,000 psi, 300 bar, allowing for smaller, lighter cylinders that delivered tremendous breakout force. The Model 1000, introduced around 1975, was the ultimate expression of this philosophy and became the largest hydraulic excavator in the world at the time. Weighing in at approximately 170 tons, metric, the Poclain 1000 was a colossus painted in the company's signature red and gray livery. It was powered by multiple engines, often two huge Deutz air-cooled diesels or General Motors engines, producing a combined output of over 900 horsepower. This multi-engine setup was designed for redundancy. If one engine failed, the machine could still limp back to the workshop or continue working at reduced capacity. What made the Poclain 1000 truly iconic was its front shovel configuration. It was designed to stand toe-to-toe with the rope shovels in quarries and open-pit mines. It featured a unique bucket geometry that allowed the operator to pry rock faces apart with surgical precision, something cable shovels could never do. The cab was perched high above the tracks, offering a commanding view, and the machine moved with a speed and fluidity that seemed impossible for its size. Although Poclain was eventually absorbed by Case and the brand name disappeared, the 1000 remains a legend. It proved that hydraulic power was the future of mining, paving the way for the modern hydraulic giants like the Liebherr R9800 or Cat 6090 that dominate the industry today. 7. Wabco 3200. Haulpak, the three-axle behemoth. The 1970s mining boom presented a specific engineering challenge. Mines needed bigger trucks to move more material, but tire technology hadn't kept up. The rubber tires available at the time simply couldn't support the weight of a 200-ton payload on two axles without overheating or exploding. The solution proposed by the Westinghouse Air Brake Company, Wabco, was the 3200 Haulpak, a truck that looked more like a rolling locomotive than a standard dump truck. The Wabco 3200, and its later B variant, solved the weight distribution problem by adding a third axle. It was a tandem-drive, three-axle giant, 10 tires total, designed to carry payloads in the 200 to 250-ton range, a capacity that was almost unheard of in the early 70s. This design allowed Wabco to use smaller, standard tires that were readily available and reliable, while still hauling massive loads. Powering this beast was an engine taken directly from the railway industry, the Electromotive Division, EMD, 12-645E4. This 12-cylinder, two-stroke locomotive engine churned out roughly 2,000 to 2,400 horsepower. Like the Terex Titan, the Wabco 3200 used an electric drive system, where the diesel engine turned a generator that powered electric traction motors in the wheels. Visually, the 3200 was unmistakable. It had a long, flat profile and a massive grille that dominated the front. Operators described driving it as steering an apartment block. The exhaust note was the distinct rhythmic throb of a locomotive, and when it throttled up, it sounded like a train leaving the station. While the three-axle design was clever, it added mechanical complexity and increased tire maintenance costs, since there were more tires to replace. As tire technology improved in the 1980s, allowing two-axle trucks to carry 240-plus tons, the need for the three-axle design vanished. The Wabco 3200 faded into history, but for a brief moment, it was the king of the haul roads. 8. Linkbelt LS 7400. The pipeline giant. When discussing 1970s excavators, most people think of the early Caterpillars or the German Demags. However, in North America, Link-Belt produced a machine that became a cult classic among heavy excavation contractors, the LS 7400. Introduced in the mid-1970s, the LS 7400 was the flagship of Link-Belt's hydraulic excavator line. At a time when many contractors were still transitioning from cable-operated draglines and clamshells to hydraulics, the LS 7400 was a reassuringly massive piece of iron. It weighed approximately 170,000 lbs, around 77 metric tons, which, while smaller than the Poclain 1000, was absolutely enormous for a general construction excavator in that era. The LS 7400 was frequently seen on massive sewer and water pipeline projects, often digging deep trenches that could swallow a house whole. It was powered by a GM Detroit diesel 12V71, a legendary two-stroke engine known for its high RPM scream. The sound of an LS 7400 working was a constant high-pitched roar that could be heard for miles. What made the LS 7400 iconic was its sheer physical presence. It had a massive, boxy upper structure and a long, heavy-duty undercarriage that gave it incredible stability. It was often equipped with a deep-digging boom and arm, allowing it to reach depths that other hydraulic hose couldn't touch. For the operators of the 70s, the LS 7400 represented the new age of power. It didn't have the finesse of modern machines, but it had brute force in spades. It was built before the era of plastic body panels and ergonomic joysticks. It was all steel, levers, and noise. Seeing one of these digging a trench was a visceral experience of raw hydraulic power. 9. Marion 8000 Series Walking Draglines, the Walking Giants. In the 1970s, the global energy crisis sparked a massive resurgence in coal mining, particularly in the United States and Australia. To reach deep coal seams, mines needed to strip away millions of tons of rock and soil, overburden. The undisputed kings of this task were the walking draglines, and the Marion 8000 series became the defining silhouette of the decade's skyline. Unlike the other machines on this list, these giants did not roll on tracks or tires. They walked. A Marion 8000 sat on a massive circular tub while working. When it needed to move, two gigantic shoes, each the size of a bus, would lower to the ground, lift the entire multi-thousand-ton structure, and drag it backward a few feet. This eccentric walking mechanism allowed these behemoths to navigate soft, muddy ground that would swallow a conventional crawler tractor whole. Marion Power Shovel Company, based in Ohio, introduced the 8000 series, such as the 8050, 8200, and 8750, specifically to meet the 70s boom. These machines were revolutionary because they utilized a modular design, allowing them to be manufactured in sections and bolted together on-site faster than previous riveted models. They were electric, powered by trailing cables thick enough to power a small city. With boom lengths exceeding 300 feet and buckets capable of holding 60 to 100 cubic yards of material, a single Marion 8000 could move mountains. While draglines are still used today, the era of the 1970s was their peak, where nearly every major surface mine had a Marion standing guard on the horizon. 10. Dart D600, the forgotten loader. When we think of giant wheel loaders today, we think of Caterpillar or Komatsu. However, in the 1970s, the Dart Truck Company was a serious contender that pushed the boundaries of size with the Dart D600. Dart was already famous for building rugged mining trucks, and they decided to apply that heavy-duty philosophy to a wheel loader. The D600 was a monster designed to load 120-ton trucks in just 3 passes. It was powered by a Detroit diesel or Cummins engine, delivering around 700 to 800 horsepower. What made the D600 unique was its reliance on a mechanical drive system at a time when its main competitor, Le Tourneau, was championing electric drive loaders. The D600 featured a distinct balanced boom geometry using nitrogen cylinders to assist in lifting the heavy bucket, a technology intended to save fuel and increase speed. It had a massive 15 cubic yard bucket and a payload capacity of 45,000 pounds, approx 20 tons. For a brief period in the 70s, the Dart D600 was a common sight in American coal and copper mines, instantly recognizable by its boxy utilitarian design and the offset cab. However, as PACCAR, Dart's parent company, shifted focus and Caterpillar introduced the reliable 9992 series, the Dart D600 faded away. It remains a cult favorite among machinery historians as a rugged, mechanical beast that simply couldn't keep up with the changing market. Conclusion: the end of an era. The 1970s ended, and with it, the era of bigger is better at any cost. The recession of the early 1980s, combined with stricter environmental regulations and a new focus on fuel efficiency, killed off many of these mechanical dinosaurs. The Fiat Allis 41B, the Terex Titan, and the Wabco 3200 were deemed too costly to run or too specialized to maintain. However, these machines paved the way for the modern equipment we see today. They were the bold experiments, the engineering risks, and the steel monsters that built the infrastructure of the modern world. They may have faded into history, but for those who saw them work, the ground still shakes in their memory. These machines were the peak of analog mechanical engineering. They drank diesel like water and moved the world without apologizing for the pollution. We will never see anything like them rolling off an assembly line again. Long live the kings of the 70s.